You bought the house. You did the responsible thing. And now you're financially paralyzed. Not paralyzed like you can't eat. No. Paralyzed like you can't invest, you can't move, you can't breathe. Like every single dollar you have is either going to the mortgage, the property tax, the insurance, or whatever just broke inside the house you own. And the kicker? You put $70,000 down to get here. $70,000! That could have been compounding in the market, building real wealth. Instead, it's sitting in a wall somewhere. Here's what nobody said before you sign those papers. Buying a home early doesn't automatically build wealth. Sometimes it destroys the exact runway you needed to build it. And look, I get it. You've heard this line your whole life. Renting is throwing money away. Buyers build equity. Renters build nothing. Your parents said it. Their parents said it. It got repeated so many times, it stopped being advice and started feeling like math. But it's not math. It's a narrative. And honestly, it's one of the most expensive mistakes our generation is making right now. My name is Jason. I'm 24. I built this channel around the financial questions nobody in our generation is asking loudly enough. And I've spent the last 2 years, obsessively running the numbers on exactly these kinds of decisions. Today, we're doing the real math on buying versus renting, and your timeline is going to look very different by the end of this.
All right, so before we get into the numbers, let me give you one stat that I think completely reframes this entire conversation. Right now, 1 in 11 millionaires in this country is a renter. Not because they can't afford to buy, because they ran the numbers and decided not to. These are people with the cash sitting in the bank to write a check for a house tomorrow, and they're choosing a lease instead. That's not a personal finance failure. That's a calculated decision. And yet, here you are, probably being told renting is throwing money away. Yeah, that's the gap I want to close today. Because the advice most people get on this decision isn't based on math. It's based on a cultural script that's been running on autopilot for 40 years. What actually happens when you do the math? That's what this video is. A real side-by-side, real numbers, and a framework you can actually use to make this decision for your own situation, instead of just inheriting someone else's answer. Let's start by killing the myth that's been running your thinking without your permission. So where did this idea even come from, that renting is throwing money away? Because it didn't appear out of nowhere. It got engineered. After World War II, the US government actively pushed homeownership as an economic policy. The mortgage interest deduction, the GI Bill, the entire suburban expansion, it was a deliberate cultural project. And it worked. Homeownership became synonymous with adulthood, stability, success. The narrative got so deeply embedded that by the time your parents were repeating it to you, nobody was questioning it anymore. It just felt true. But here's the problem with throwing money away. Every single month you live somewhere, you are paying for something that disappears. Period. Renters pay rent. Yeah, sure, we know that. But homeowners pay mortgage interest. And for the first several years of a 30-year mortgage, the overwhelming majority of your payment is interest, not equity, not coming back. On a $350,000 home at 7%, your first monthly payment is roughly $2,329. About $2,042 of that, pure interest. Gone. Not building equity, not coming back. So the next time someone tells you rent is dead money, the math says your mortgage payment mostly is too. At least in the beginning. At least in the beginning. And that's before we talk about what homeowners pay that renters simply don't. Property tax, homeowners insurance, maintenance, and the standard rule of thumb, right, is 1% of your home's value per year, which on a $350,000 home is $3,500 annually just in upkeep, just to maintain the thing. HOA fees, if applicable, closing costs when you buy, typically 2 to 5% of the purchase price, and closing costs again when you sell. Renting has none of that. Your rent check is your ceiling. A homeowner's monthly cost has a floor, not a ceiling. Now, none of this means buying is wrong. I'm not here to clown on homeowners.
It means the throwing money away framing is just intellectually dishonest. And it's been doing a lot of damage to a generation making one of the biggest financial decisions of their lives based on a bumper sticker.
Okay, now let's be fair.
Because buying a home does build wealth, just not always in the way people assume, and not always as efficiently as the alternative. Here's what homeownership actually gives you. First, forced savings. Every mortgage payment chips away at your principal. Over 10 years on our $350,000 home, you'll pay down $39,725 of the loan. That's real. Second, appreciation. U.S. home values have historically grown around 3 to 4% annually, adding approximately $138,960 in value over a decade. Also real. And third, leverage. You controlled a $350,000 asset with $70,000 down. That's a genuine wealth mechanism. These are real. Buying isn't a scam. I want to be clear about that. The question is it the most efficient wealth building tool available to you right now?
Okay, so let's run the actual numbers. And stay with me here because this is where it gets real. $350,000 home, 20% down, $280,000 loan at 7% over 30 years. Your monthly mortgage payment, $1,862.85. Over 10 years, that's $223,341 in total payments. $18,816 of that is pure interest, not equity. Gone.
Then add what every homeowner pays on top. Property tax at 1.1% annually, $38,500 over the decade. Maintenance tax at 1%, $35,000. Homeowners insurance, $15,000. Add those up, $223,541 plus $38,500 plus $35,000 plus $15,000. That's $312,041 in total housing costs over 10 years. Now, to get your true non-equity cost, we take that $312,041, remove the $39,725 that was actually building equity, and add back the $17,500 in transaction costs, what you pay to buy and again to sell. That lands at $289,816 in costs that built you nothing. Your gross gain, appreciation plus principal paydown, $138,960 plus $39,725. That's $178,865. Subtract $289,816 and your net position after 10 years is negative $111,130. Now, here's the other side, and this is the part most people never see. That same $70,000 down payment goes into an S&P 500 index fund at its historical average of 10% annually. After 10 years, $70,000 becomes $181,561, a gain of $111,561. And here's what the throwing money away crowd never puts in the model. The renter is paying rent too, obviously. Starting at $1,800 a month, increasing 3% annually. That's $247,619 total over the decade. The buyer spent $312,041 in housing costs over the same period. That's $64,421 more than the renter spent on housing. Add that to the investment gain, $111,561 plus $64,421, and the renter's net position is $175,982. The gap is $287,112 in the renter's favor. And look, I want to be precise about that. These numbers shift with different markets, different interest rates, different rent levels, sure. But what doesn't change is the methodology. Most people buying right now aren't running this math at all. They're buying because they were told to. And in a 7% rate environment, with these real costs fully accounted for, that decision is one of the most expensive ones our generation is making. Now, here's where I'm going to say something that might actually surprise you, coming from this video. Buying a home can absolutely be the right move. Not as a default, not because your parents did it, not because your coworker just closed on a place and made you feel like you're behind, but because the numbers actually work in your favor, under specific conditions. And those conditions are real. The first one is time. The single biggest variable in the rent versus buy equation isn't the interest rate or the home price. It's how long you stay. Transaction costs alone run 5% of the purchase price between buying and selling. On a $350,000 home, that's $17,500 that evaporates the moment you move. If you're there for 2 years, you're starting from a $17,500 hole before appreciation has had any real time to work.
But stretch that timeline out and the picture improves. Not because buying suddenly beats renting outright, but because appreciation compounds. Your principal paydown accelerates, and those upfront costs get spread across enough years to stop being dead weight. If you know you're planting roots somewhere for a decade or more, buying starts making a lot more sense. The second condition is rate environment, and this one's quantifiable. The scenario we ran assumed a 7% mortgage rate. Renter's 10-year advantage was $287,000. Run the exact same model at 5%, that gap drops to $218,900, a $68,000 reduction just from a 2-point rate difference. Your monthly payment falls from $1,863 to $1,503. Less of each payment bleeds to interest, more builds equity. If rates fall and you can refinance into the mid-5s or below, this decision looks significantly different. Like, significantly. The third condition is market selection. Not all housing markets behave the same, at all. Cities like Nashville and the broader Dallas-Fort Worth area have seen sustained long-term appreciation, driven by real demand, job growth, population inflow, constrained housing supply. Markets with those structural drivers work harder for you as a buyer. Markets without them don't. Know what's driving prices in your city before you sign anything. The version of buying that wins looks like this. You're staying long enough for appreciation to compound. You're in a market with genuine demand. Rates are reasonable, and you're not stretching so hard on the down payment that you're killing your ability to invest anything else. That version of buying is a legitimate wealth building move. The version that doesn't win, buying at 25 because you feel like you should. In a market you might leave in 3 years, at a 7% rate that front loads your payments with interest. That's the version this video is warning you about. So, here's where we land. The math we just ran isn't an argument that renting always wins. It's an argument that most people never actually run the math, and the decision you make without running it is almost always the more expensive one. The real question isn't rent or buy. It's this. What is this decision actually costing you in opportunity?
Because every dollar that goes into a down payment is a dollar that isn't compounding somewhere else. Every year you're locked into a house you might need to leave is a year of flexibility you spent. Those aren't abstract costs. We just showed you exactly what they're worth. So before you make this decision, run 3 numbers. First, your true monthly cost of ownership, not just the mortgage. Mortgage plus property tax plus insurance plus maintenance. On a $350,000 home at today's rates, that number comes out to $2,601 a month, not $1,863. $321 in property tax, $292 in maintenance, $125 in insurance, on top of your base mortgage payment. Know what you're actually signing up for. Second, your opportunity cost. Take your down payment, run it at 10% annually for however many years you're considering, and see what that money could become if it stayed invested instead. Third, your timeline. If there's any real chance you're moving in under 7 years, the transaction costs alone are going to hurt you badly. Be honest about where your life is actually going, not where you hope it's going. And here's the thing. Nobody in this conversation ever says out loud, renting while investing the difference is a legitimate wealth building strategy. It's not a consolation prize. It's not what you do while you wait to be able to afford a house. Just like buying wins under the right conditions, the right timeline, the right rate, the right market, renting and investing wins under its own set of conditions too. For a lot of people in their 20s right now, in a 7% rate environment with housing prices where they are, those conditions are very much in play. The stigma around renting is a cultural artifact, not a financial truth. We showed you the math. Now you have what most people making this decision don't have, an actual framework,
instead of inherited noise.
Look, I'm not here to tell you renting is always the move. And I'm not here to tell you buying is the dream everyone says it is. What I'm telling you is this. The people who win with money aren't the ones who followed the loudest opinion in the room. They're the ones who ran the numbers, understood the real cost, and made the decision that actually fit their life. That's what this video was. Not a debate, a framework.
So take the 3 numbers we gave you, run them on your actual situation, and stop letting a cultural story make a 6-figure financial decision for you. If you're watching finance content and you want the math instead of the myth, subscribe, because that's the only thing we do here. Real math, no noise, every single week.